Hello! So today we're going to be going over hip stretching for flexibility. So I wanted to go over some of the stretches that I found are helpful for me in my hips, and hopefully they're helpful for you too. So we're going to be going over a lot of the muscles that attach at the hips, and then also, even though some of them attach up at the hips, they also go down to the thigh, a lot of them. So we're going to be mostly focusing on the muscles in this region here though. So the first one we're going to start out with is the hamstrings. And if you have any questions, let me know in chat and I'll get to them as quickly as I can. Or if you have a muscle that feels particularly tight, let me know. But I want to start with the hamstrings because a lot of people have very tight hamstrings or feel like they have very tight hamstrings. So I want to start with that first. So for that, we're going to go to a kneeling position. Let me know if you guys can hear me okay. So from this, you're going to put one foot out straight in front of you. The hamstrings run all the way from the hips down to the back of the knee. They actually attach at two joints. So we're going to be stretching them across that entire length of the hamstrings. So try and have a straight knee, and then you're going to try and keep your hips back. So to do that, you're going to push your chest forward because we don't want to round the hips. We want to keep the hips engaged, so we're stretching across both joints. So you're going to push your chest forward till you feel a stretch in your hamstrings along the back of the thigh. And we're going to hold that there. Try and breathe normally through this. If you feel like you're short of breath, try to back off just a little bit. No need to actually push into pain on this. You just want to feel that tension in the back of your leg. This is a very common muscle to get tight, especially if you're doing a lot of sitting, driving, if you're not working the hamstrings directly in your exercise. These can tighten up and then you can have tearing of the hamstrings. Very common muscle for hamstring tears or damage to those hamstrings. So we want to make sure they're pliable and flexible. And holding for about 10 more seconds. Should start to feel relaxing to hold this stretch. It shouldn't be increasing in tension as you do this. It should feel like it's starting to let go of some of that tension. And go ahead and switch to the other side. This is scary. Why is it scary? Well, hopefully none of these should be frightening. If you need to, do a slightly, if you want a little bit easier variation, you can also do this one sitting in a chair. How long will it take to do the full splits? Joint, really, it varies person to person in your individual genetics and also how what your day-to-day life looks like. I don't have a good answer for you on that one. You can also do this one sitting in a chair. The important thing is have that knee straight and bring your chest forward rather than rounding down towards the toe. Now I'll stretch that hamstring in a chair if you'd rather not do it kneeling. I find I get a little bit better stretch though to do it kneeling on the ground, 1 foot forward, where I can really push the hips back into that stretch. Bro's Mr. Clean's cousin. We have the same head shape, I guess. A lot of people say that. I do try and be clean though. And you should push your hips back, pushing your chest forward, feeling a stretch in your hamstrings all the way from the hip to the back of the knee. Trailer asks, are you a chiropractic? No, I'm not a chiropractor. I have a degree in exercise science. So these are the stretches I found really are effective for me, so I wanted to share them with you guys on. I think hip stretching is really important, and especially it's very easy for your hips to get tight. I know I've gotten a lot tighter over the years and I have had to work to get that back. I used to be able, oh, thank you. Kason says your voice is calming. I appreciate that. Do my best. Figured that's good for a stretching live stream too. So now we're gonna stretch the muscles in the front of the hips. They run up at the top of the hip bone down into the thigh, right in here. So what you're going to do is, still in that kneeling position, you're going to stretch this back leg by pushing your hips forward you're almost trying to push the entire leg forward where the knee stays in place and the hips push away from it till you feel that stretch in the front of your back hip. If you need to increase it a little bit, you can turn away from that hip, turning towards the opposite side to increase that stretch slightly. So if you turn this way, it'll reduce it. Turn this way and we'll increase it slightly. So really trying to hold into that stretch though. Try not to arch your back as you're doing it. You're just pushing your hips forward to stretch right in here. Sujal, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, says, yeah, let's stretch those hips. Yeah, I agree. It's very easy for these muscles to get tight, especially if we're holding one position for very long. I'll do my best. I can only go so far on that. So we're stretching the muscles that attach to the hip. A lot of them actually also attach into the femur or the thigh bone. And same thing on the other side. So one leg back, we're stretching the back leg, pushing the hips forward into that stretch, feeling that deep in your hip flexors, which run right across the front of your hip, down into your thigh. A lot of people have tipped pelvis, and this actually can contribute to that, where it tips it backwards, where it puts a lot more pressure in the low back, because the entire hip or pelvis is tipped and putting a lot of extra compression back in there. The background music is making you sleep? Oh no. So we want it to be relaxing, but not making you fall asleep. Taking deep breaths in as you do this. Nothing should be strenuous or painful. And we're holding all these stretches, trying to do a constant static stretch on these. There's a lot of different types of stretching. We're doing static stretching today, where we hold constant pressure at a lengthened position for the muscle. So now we're going to stretch the adductors, which are on the inside of the thigh. So still in a kneeling position, you're going to put one leg out to the side and then drop your hips back, feeling a stretch on the inner part of your hip into your thigh. So these muscles actually run from the base of the hips all the way down to the knee on the inner part of your thigh. Can you please help me? I've got serious pain in my right shoulder. It's serious. How long have you had pain for? Shoulder can be a lot of things. You might need to go actually get someone to check that out more directly. I could show you exercises that may or may not have an effect. Depends on if something is actually damaged in your shoulder or not. I have no way of telling you without. I have no way of doing that with you because I can't see you. But I can do, see what we can do talking about that. If it's pretty serious pain, you probably want to go get that checked out. About 2 months, that's a long time to be in pain. What causes that pain to increase? A particular movements or lifts, and the other leg out to the side, dropping the hips back, feeling the stretch on the inner part of your thigh. Again, I love questions. I'll do what I can, but sometimes that requires you to go to, it might even require you to go get medical help or see someone more directly. Is it hurting all the time, or is your shoulder hurting just some of the time or with a particular exercise or activity like tennis or basketball, anything in particular that would cause it to hurt more. Shoulder is a very complex joint and it could be a lot of different things. That's why I'm asking so many questions. All right, so now we're going to stretch the muscles, one of the quad muscles, so that you've got 3 quad muscles that attach at the thigh, and then one that attaches all the way up at the hip. So we're going to be hitting that one that is up at the hip. So what you're going to do is reach around, grab your ankle, and then pull up to the back, feeling a stretch in the front of your thigh. Something most people don't know is the shoulder is actually 3 joints. You have one here, and then one here. So it actually can be any one of those 3 can cause problems and cause pain in the shoulder. So it really varies. If you have any questions though, I'd love to hear more. Tino says, this is cool. Thank you, Tino. Doing incline bench at the gym and something snapped from my shoulder lifting 405. Wow, that's a really heavy lift. If you felt something snap, I would definitely get it checked out. I would go see a doctor. If you felt a snapping sensation, I would recommend you go see someone who can give you a medical advice on that. Definitely, if you're able to. Stream mobility classes. Good on you, man. This is awesome. Hey, thank you. I appreciate it, Tino. Hopefully I'm pronouncing your name right. We're going to do the same thing on the other side, stretching the quad muscle that goes up to your hip. You're going to go from a kneeling position, grab your ankle, pulling up to the back, feeling a stretch in the front of your thigh on the back leg. Like doing mobility classes, I figure these are what's been really helpful to me. I wanted to share them with you guys. It's painful when you train chest. Yeah, you might. I'm concerned if you felt a snapping, that's if something shifted or tore in your shoulder and is causing you pain, I would definitely get that checked out. You can try doing rotator cuff exercises to improve your muscle strength for what's holding your shoulder together. Show that in just 1 second. And relax. Let me take a quick moment to answer Sujal's question. So, what you can do for an exercise for the shoulder is going here, starting at your belly button, and rotate out and away with a cable or a band. So you want it right at belly button height. I actually probably need to drop this just a little bit down. And then rotating out and away. You should feel that right back here in the shoulder. These help hold that shoulder in place and move it in the ball and socket. If that's painful, go get it checked out. Don't do it if it hurts, because you might have something more going on there. But that's a good place to start to see, can I do this? Is this, and building up the muscles that hold that shoulder in place, I think are a really good thing to do for, especially if you have difficulty in bench press or in pull downs. Converging chest press seems to work best for you. Converging chest press, is that where you're doing like this? Or that's, I've heard of that as a cable fly. Tino, yes, rotator cuff exercises. Agreed, rotator cuff exercises are great. I feel like they get missed by a lot of people. Some people don't have any sort of pain from that, but if you start having pain, I think it's a really good place to start to see, is this actually weak, where I need to shore this up to make those muscles strong and able to hold your shoulder in socket. All right, so now we're gonna stretch the muscles on the outside of the hip, right here in your pocket area. So I'm gonna rotate this back down. Hang on just a moment. All right, so for this one, it's gonna be laying on your back. So you're gonna bring your knee up to the front, grab with the opposite hand, and pull across your body till you feel a stretch right across your hip on the outside, right about where your pocket is. We're stretching the glute med and the muscle, or gluteus medius, one of the glute muscles, and the muscles deep in the hip socket, crossed here. If you want, you can actually pull up a little bit towards your shoulder as well to increase the stretch. If this is a little too easy, just pull a little bit up till you feel that stretch in that hip socket. And then hold that stretch. Just realize I can't read chat as easily in this position. So I can see that you're there. I will be right back up. So this is stretching the outer part of the hip a lot. I find that this one people don't do quite as much. Some people have IT band pain, and this can actually help some with that. If you want to increase that stretch though, you could also straighten your leg. That's a little bit challenging for me to do, and you should feel it more down into that thigh. I do the knee bent variation of this though. And relax. Hang on one moment. Thanks, brother, for the advice. Wishing you well in life. Hey, thank you. I wish you well too. I hope you get it figured out with your shoulder. That is no fun to have pain in your shoulder. Tino, I want to improve my roundhouse kicks, side kicks, and can use recommendations for any exercises or stretches to help achieve that goal. Yeah, that's, let me come back to that one in just a second. Yeah, actually this is a good thing for side kick, because you can actually get that leg from down here. You're getting that range, because this glute med muscle pulls up to the side. So if you're not able to actually fully contract it, it's going to limit how high your side kick can get. Though that's probably more limited by the adductors on the middle. So you'd want to do this stretch, opening up the inside of the thigh. So I would recommend though, stretching this outside portion, get this muscle where it's able to lengthen and shorten. Sometimes if this muscle is already shortened, it won't be able to lift the leg, because in the side kick you need that what's called abduction of the hip. So if this muscle is already short, it has nowhere left to go. So lengthening it back to where it can lengthen and shorten can help your side kick, especially the side kick. Side kick, not psychic. Wow. I'll have to enunciate that a little bit better. The YouTube algorithm picks it up. It's like, oh, he's talking about fortune telling. It's like, no, that's not what we're about here. Now, if you're doing roundhouse kick, depends on what's limiting for your hips, doing like a roundhouse. If you find that you're not able to lift your knee up and then get to that, or if you find that it's tight across the back, it really depends on what's limiting you. But I would recommend stretching the inner part of your thigh and then the hamstrings in the back. Talked about this at the beginning, putting one leg out to the front and then bring your chest towards your toe until you feel that stretch along the back of the thigh. I personally Tino asked, do you subscribe to the idea of static stretching post-workout or dynamic stretching pre-workout? I like both. I prefer static stretching post-workout. I find that it's easier for me to feel like I'm getting a good stretch into the muscle, and the pre-workout dynamic stretching or moving through is more about warming up the muscle, and I feel like I don't get as good of a stretch into that. But good question. All right, so we stretched forward and back, side to side, and covered a little bit of everything on that. So we're gonna do one more stretch for deep in the hip. You should feel this right at the base of the hip bone. So what you're gonna do is walk, sitting in a kneeling position. You're gonna walk your knees out to the sides, and then going on your hands and knees, you're gonna push your hips back to a seated position. You should feel it stretch deep in that hip on the inner part of your thigh. You can even come down, bring your chest down to use your elbows to help push back. This is a great stretch to start with, especially if you can't do the full splits. If you're wanting to do, splits, you can start here to build up that flexibility. This is called a frog stretch, or at least that's the name I've heard it's called. I'm sure everyone has their own name for this one, but I like calling it the frog. And on all these, I'd recommend holding 20 to 30 seconds at least. What stretches do I use to be flexible? That depends on where you want to be flexible. On all these, I would use static stretching to be more flexible. I find it's pretty consistent. So static stretching is where you stretch and hold the stretch for 20 to 30 seconds without moving. Maybe glutes too. Oh yeah, we can do some glutes. Tyler says, Bud is trying to seduce mom. No, I'm not trying to seduce anyone. So for glutes, that's a good stretch. So what you can do, you're gonna bring your knee up to your chest. Make sure you guys can see me. Up to your chest, grab on top of the knee, or underneath if you want, it's uncomfortable here. But then you're gonna hug your knee up towards your chest. You should feel a stretch in the back of your hip in your glutes. And hold that for 20 to 30 seconds. So this other leg should be straight. If you bend this knee, it actually rotates the whole hips, takes pressure off of that glute stretch. Can't actually tell, I can't see my monitor. So hopefully you guys can see. Let me move that just slightly. Need to get it, Matt. This is hard on your knees. Oh yeah. If you can you can even do a towel, a rolled up towel that's folded to help take pressure off your knees. Tell Mary I apologize. So I'm not actually Catholic. It just looks like it with the microphone. It's a good one. I hear that one a lot, actually. And bringing your other knee up, hugging in towards your chest, feeling a stretch in the back of your bent knee hip, back in here. So stretch for those glutes. Man, I can tell I do not do this one enough. It's definitely tight. I should do this more often. Thank you, Tino, for reminding us of the glute stretch. Appreciate it. All right, and relax. Yeah, definitely a towel or any sort of, you could use a yoga mat, but if you have a towel, I would definitely recommend that as a starting point to give you some extra padding on your knee, any of the kneeling exercises, especially if you're on a hard floor, especially on something like a quad stretch or a rectus femoris stretch. That's very hard on your knee. Even on carpet, I can feel that through my knee. So I would definitely recommend having a little extra padding. Right. So any other places that you feel like, oh man, I'm tight on this area of my hips or thighs? Anything come up, feel like that's an area you want to target or know how to stretch? You could even do a adductor stretch standing up. It's just a little bit more of like a side squat where you lean into it, feeling a stretch on the inner part of your thigh, all the way up to your hip. And then hold this position, but they can get a little bit burny on your, can start burning on your quads on this side. Should you feel that in your hip flexor? When you do this one, hugging your leg in, or are you saying this one? Where you're, hang on, doing this one? Are you asking if you should feel it in your hip flexor doing this? Because yes, this is a hip flexor. It's you've got a number of hip flexors. This one more stretches the rectus femoris, which is one of the quad muscles. So we're pulling up on this, because this muscle attaches down at the knee, all the way up to the top of the hip, well, all the way up into the hip. So it actually pulls this way in the hip as well as this way at the knee. So we're bending it and pulling it this way to stretch that muscle in the front of the hip. So you are getting some of your hip flexors with that stretch as well. Hopefully that makes sense. We're always going the opposite direction to stretch the muscle. If the muscle goes this way, then we go this way to stretch it. You can do that one standing up, but I find that it's easier to isolate in a kneeling position because your hips tend to go back with the knee on that way, and we need the hips to stay in place while stretching to stretch up at the hip flexor. So that way we can actually get the muscle on both sides. So we're stretching it at the top and down at the knee, down at the bottom. All right, so that is our stretching for the hips. we're going to be trying to do, or I'm going to try and do a stretching for the shoulders as well in the future. When you pull your, hang on one second. Tino says the glute exercise, when I pull my knee up to my chest, you feel it, he feels it in his hip, or they feel it in their hip. So you are shortening your hip flexor. Do you tend to have tight hip flexors? Because it can actually, as you shorten it, there is a technique for doing that where you're actually letting blood flow go back to the hip flexors to let that muscle relax. Because especially if it's tight, you then shorten it to then let circulation into the area. Maybe you're being too aggressive with it. Maybe. Is it painful at all? It shouldn't be painful. It should just feel light tension. Let me think for a moment. What you could do could I do a, let me think for a moment. Yeah, I would try and be a little less aggressive with it and just hold a constant tension. Back off just a little bit if you feel it hurting you in the hip flexors, Tino. Constantinos, sorry if I mispronounced your name, asked if I could do a shoulder pain relief exercise. So there are a number of things that can go wrong with the shoulder. So I would, I can show you an exercise I would start with, but if it's painful or if it continues to be painful, I would go get it checked out. But what I would start with is using either a resistance band or cable for the shoulder. I'd starting right your belly button height, and then rotating out and away. You should feel this right in the back of the shoulder. So we're strengthening that rotator cuff, doing that 10 to 15 reps, and see if that can help. If it hurts more, then go get it checked out for sure. You need to actually seek medical advice for that. Anything that increases that pain, don't, if this increases that pain, don't do it. But that's where I would start any shoulder exercise for shoulder discomfort. You could also, so something you can do as well, a lot of people don't have serratus anterior built up as much, which is right here in the armpit. It goes from the rib cage to the shoulder blade. So what you can do is let me show it this way, is again I'll get it eventually, taking a band, putting that band right at shoulder height, and you're going to do a 1-inch punch forward. See how I'm going just a couple inches forward, pushing my shoulder blade out forward. So I'm not bending the elbow, I'm pushing straight out to the front and then back. That should be right in here that you feel it. So it's a stabilizing muscle for the shoulder blade. And it's very lightweight to start with. So if you don't have a band, you can also do it. Hang on a moment. So with dumbbells, you can do this one laying down. And you're going to lift your shoulder blades up off the ground and then back down. So my elbows stay straight as I lift up to the front. You know, it's hard to see. It's only a couple inches that you're going up and then back down. So lifting shoulder blades up off the ground and then back. That's another good shoulder stability exercise. Abby says, I have flat foot and pain in foot flexors. So that could be, that depends on what's going on with your feet. Sometimes you need to go and see someone, a specialist for that. If you have flat feet, you can, what you can do is take a towel. I don't have a towel with me right now, but try and work on gripping with your toes to create some of that, the strength in the bottom of your foot. So I have shoes on, so it's hard to show, but you're almost doing this with your toes, trying to grab that towel and then let go. There's a book called Joint Friendly Fitness. I think the author recommended using parallel grip in order to avoid shoulder impingement. Oh, and pulling or pushing exercises? Yeah, you could do that. If you're up here, especially, the more up you go like that, the more you're closing off that space in the shoulder. So if you're down here like this, on your bench press, especially if you're down a little bit lower with your elbow, it creates more space in your shoulder. And that definitely works better especially if someone has an impingement in the shoulder for pain. Thank you for your time. Have a good one. Hey, thank you for coming. Appreciate you being here. No problem. All right. Well, I got to get going. Thank you everyone for being here. We're going to be going over some shoulder stretching next. So hope to see you guys there. Have a great day.